Hello and welcome to another edition of What Does the Giraffe Say Media with me, Kathleen Ratorne. We're an organisation that aims to connect people in conservation by holding live interviews on social media. Today you'll be seeing that I am joined by Anna Tolan, and she is the founder for Chipembele Wildlife Education Trust. So Anna, I'm going to hand over to you. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how you went from being a police officer in the UK to running conservation projects in Zambia.
Yes, hello Kathleen, it's really nice to be here and thank you for inviting me. Well, it seems like there's a big kind of gap between the two, and really there's not so much. I mean, I've always been about making a difference and putting things back into the world and the community. And in that respect, the work I'm doing now is not that much different to police work. But I guess to go a little bit further back than that, I've always been interested in animals and wildlife. So when I was a very young girl, somebody gave me a heap of National Geographic magazines, and I was just absolutely fascinated with all the pictures of remote places and the animals, and I put them all over my bedroom wall, so everyone else had pictures of pop stars and I had all these National Geographic pictures. And I used to go down to the library after school and get all the oversized books out that had pictures of wild places and, you know, the big coffee table books, and take them home and just pore over them and dream of going to these remote places like the Serengeti and the Rockies and places like that. So it was always kind of in me to go to remote places, but also there was part of me that also wanted to make a difference to the world in a very real way. So I did a degree in environmental science and couldn't get a job in conservation because I had no experience, and somehow ended up taking a job in the police. And I had a very interesting career. I had a very fulfilling and interesting career, but there was always this part of me that loved animals, loved wildlife, loved remote places, and there was this calling, I guess. And so I met my husband in the police and we got married. His name's Steve, and he also thankfully shared my passion for animals, but not for remote places. And he'd never been out of the UK anywhere. So I started saving for our first trip to Africa. And he just was not interested at all, and thought we could, you know, have a new drive or have a new kitchen or whatever. And eventually I said, well, if you're not going, I'm going on my own. And he said, well, no, you're not. I'll come with you. And so we went on a whistle-stop tour on an overland truck of 5 countries, saw the gorillas and the Serengeti, and were both completely hooked. And Steve could retire, but it wasn't for about another 7 years. This was way back in 1989. And so we decided it made more financial sense for us to wait for his retirement when he could get a pension. And in that meantime, we traveled to all sorts of different countries and came across Zambia. And as soon as we came to Zambia, it seemed like this was the right place. It just seemed comfortable, seemed like we just fitted with the people and the environment and the culture and everything. Yeah, so that was kind of the next step of our adventures.
And then what led you to starting the organisation itself, and what's the ethos behind it?
Well, I can't really say where it came from. A lot of people have asked me that, and I can't really say where setting up a conservation education program for Zambian children and communities came from. I used to keep an African diary of all our travels and all our dreams and everything. And I can only pinpoint it to an entry I made in 1994 when I said something like, wouldn't it be wonderful if one day we could live in Africa and have an education program and a centre for local children so we could teach them about the importance of wildlife. Now, I don't know where that came from. but that was the kind of the seed of it.
Yeah.
And so that was what we kind of built towards. And when we came out in 1998, that was the intention of finding somewhere where there was plenty of wildlife, but it was being threatened by development, and there was human wildlife conflict and all sorts of environmental problems because of the interaction of people and wildlife. It's a very long story, but the long story short was we eventually came to South Luangwa, and we were camping on the Luangwa River, because we always wild camped. We never used to go into camps and lodges. We always wild camped. And while we looked around the area, and the local chief heard our story and agreed to give us a piece of land on the Luangwa River, which we were never expecting, for the development of a conservation education centre for his people. And it's the first time the community had got a resource on the Luangwa River. And previously, up to then, it was always lodges and everything. So that was kind of where it took off, and we built our education centre back in 2001, and the main aim was always to teach local children about wildlife and conservation and the value of conserving wildlife and the natural environment, and it's how it benefits local people and how it benefits both sides. Both sides benefit from that kind of safe interaction. So that's what we did. We built a conservation education centre, which opened in 2001. We had a lot of opposition. It wasn't an easy process. But once we'd actually got all the permissions in place, everything took off. And since then, it hasn't looked back, really.
And as you were mentioning there, the whole focus is on conservation education. And I completely agree that education plays a huge part in being able to protect wildlife and wild spaces. What kind of projects do you have? And have you seen anything that's proved to be quite an effective tool to really kind of drum in and get people passionate?
The bread and butter of the organisation really is conservation clubs, teaching in the conservation clubs in schools, and going out into the communities and teaching in community groups as well. So when we started, for the first 10 years, I was very much a one-man band, and I used to do everything. I do the accounts, I did the teaching, I did just everything. And then as the organisation grew, we've now got a team of 6 educators, including a conservation education manager and an outreach coordinator, and 6 community conservation educators who take the programme out into the villages every day of the week and into the schools every day of the week. So that's kind of the core of the organisation. But under that, there's all these fun projects and colourful projects that I think help make Chipembele really interesting and valuable and inspiring. So some of those would include an environmental campaign in the community each year, which is student-led, with a big march down the streets and a big event at the culmination of it. We have a Nature Nights program where we take children out into the bush to sleep overnight and learn about wildlife at firsthand, which is probably the most popular of all our programs. We have a student sponsorship program where we sponsor students who are in our conservation programs that we encourage to follow up with jobs or careers in conservation. And following on from that, a program called the Aspiring Conservation Leaders, which is like a gap between school and going to university, because there's a big gap in Zambia between finishing school and actually standard that they require at university. So it's a life skills program for a year. We have field trips into the national park and a joint program with another organization called the Zambia Carnivore Program, where one of our ex-students, Tandiwe Mwitwa, leads students on research projects into the park every week of the school year. And radio programs. So we broadcast with other organized NGOs in the area on conservation issues to the local community. We also try and link with other organizations, and this is not just nationally but internationally as well. And I think the highlight of all of this would be our trips to Australia. And we've taken 2 lots of children, one in 2014 and one in 2019 to Australia for a student exchange program, which was absolutely incredible. And the follow-on from that is most of these children now are pursuing either jobs in conservation or are still studying further education in conservation.
And typically, what's the attitude towards conservation within the communities? And through your projects, have you seen a change in this attitude?
I've seen a big change. When we first came, there wasn't much knowledge about it. Now the children get it. The children are very easy. They're like sponges. They take it all in. They take it on board. The adult community are a harder sell. But I have seen a big shift, and I can say that in the last few years, talking to Conservation South Luangwa, which is another NGO in the area that focuses on anti-poaching work and human-wildlife conflict in the area, that there's been reduction in poaching and in snaring. And just talking to people in the community, they all get it. Now, we're lucky in this area that we've got tourism. So it's quite an easy sell, because you can tell people that to conserve wildlife because there's benefits to it, there's employment, there's financial benefits from the tourism industry, the schools all seem to get improved and whatever. And the further out you go from this tourism rich area, the harder it is to convince people to conserve wildlife. But as you further out you go, there's less wildlife to conserve.
Right.
But I've definitely seen a shift in attitudes and behavior. And that has been evidenced by some independent research projects that we've.
Oh, it seems like her Wi-Fi is playing up. I know that she was having some issues earlier, so hopefully she can just click back in a minute. So yeah, as you can see, we are talking to Anna Tolan, and she is the founder, and she has been working very strongly with the local communities to try and improve engagement and protect animals and wild spaces based in Zambia. Just going to see if we can pull her back in now. Let's have a look. There she is. Here we go. Yeah.
We live in a wonderful place, but it's pretty remote, and internet is intermittent.
Yeah, completely understand. So yeah, we were talking about the changes in attitude, and you said there was an independent study that was showing that there had been changes.
Yes, that's right. And one of the studies that was done interviewed children that have been in our program compared to children that hadn't been on our program or had any conservation education, but also went back to the families of those same children and interviewed those. And there was a very significant difference between the two kind of groups. So the families were also the ones that weren't cutting down trees and weren't throwing litter and were planting trees and were, not using catapults to kill small animals, and all those conservation issues that are done sometimes at village level were not being done generally by these other groups that have been through our program. So yeah, very pleased that there has been a big change in attitude and behaviour, though a long way to go. The problem with our area is that because it's a high tourism area, people are coming in. So we get people coming in from outside of Zambia looking for work, looking for employment, looking for the benefits that tourism brings, and they're not from this area, so they don't have the same kind of allegiance to traditional values and traditional leadership that the local people would have. And so it's a continual battle to try and educate and sensitize everybody in the community.
For sure. I mean, it is a continuous work for sure, but it's obviously having an impact. So well done, and thank you for everything that you're doing. You also have a rehabilitation centre. Can you talk to us a little bit about this? What type of animals do you get? Are there very typical reasons for them coming to you? And also, how do you find out about these animals in the first place?
Well, mostly they come from the community. People report them as mostly as orphans that have been subject of human-wildlife conflict, and so for example, October to December is mango season, and a lot of the villages in Mfui have got mango trees surrounding them. There is a glut of mangoes, and so all the monkeys come into the villages to eat the mangoes, and the baboons, and while they're there, they can also do other destructive behavior, stealing other food or whatever. So that sometimes the mothers get killed and babies are left, and they're played with like toys amongst by the children until somebody takes pity on them and rescues them. And so October to December is usually our high intake of primate babies. We've also we've taken a whole range of animals, from tiny squirrels through all sorts of birds of prey, owls, through lots of warthogs, and more unusual animals, maybe hippos, elephants. So for the elephants that we get, who are all orphaned as a result of human-wildlife conflict, we just keep them for a few weeks to stabilize them and do all the health checks. And once it's agreed that they're ready to be transported, then we take them off to a proper elephant orphanage in Lusaka under Game Rangers International, where they stay for a long time for the rehabilitation process. But yeah, that's a pretty intense time. Having an elephant is a really intense time, because they need, here we've got some pictures of the latest one we had was we had about 3 in 3 months, and this is Wamwai. He was the last one. Wamwai means the lucky one, and he was found in a hole in the ground which was being used as a water hole by a village, and he slipped into it. There were no other elephants around. He stayed there for a night. The villagers all came around. They couldn't get him out. It got muddier and muddier. And so the team of scouts were called the next day and pulled him out, and he was brought to us. And the guy on the left in the colourful T-shirt, his name's Innocent. He was one of our keepers. So when you have baby elephants, this one was just 2 months old. It's very, very young for an elephant, and the chances of survival are quite low when they're that young. So the usual elephant keepers that I call on when we have elephants were not available. And so I called my manager in Mfui and I said, Corey, we need some elephant keepers. I'm just desperate that we've got this elephant coming in like an hour, and we need some keepers because they need 24-hour care around the clock. You can't leave them for even 5 minutes. And so he sent 2 of our students who were in the Aspiring Conservation Leaders program, this program I told you about between school and university. They came down innocent is absolutely amazing. He fell in love with him the first time he saw him, and followed him around, comforting him all day, and slept with him in the stall at night with his blanket. And so it worked out really, really well, and a great example of how our programs can link in with actual hands-on conservation work.
I completely agree. And it's also shown that the work that you did educating years ago is now coming to fruition now, as you're seeing these young students now becoming young adults and actually putting the work in to help these animals. How can we then you spoke about it earlier in terms of how the communities have different attitudes towards conservation, and some people's minds are changing and some others aren't. But you're also finding, of course, that human populations are continuously to grow. That means it's encroaching into these wild spaces. That means there's going to be more human-wildlife conflict. What can we do to try and balance the needs of people with the needs of wildlife so that everyone benefits and we stop these conflicts?
Yeah, it's a really, really complex and difficult issue without one solution. I firmly believe in education and sensitizing communities about the benefits of wildlife and conserving them. But it's got to be more than that. It's got to be giving them resources and the ability to carry out projects themselves that they benefit from. So it's not just us saying, oh, look at these lovely animals, you've got to conserve them. You know, they've got to come up with their own projects where they realize the benefit of conserving wild places. For example, beekeeping projects. So they conserve an area of forest because they're keeping bees and selling honey. You know, then it becomes a very real benefit to them. And if we can do more and more projects like that, then I think you can genuinely win over the local community, because without the local community, the wildlife's finished. We come in as outsiders and try and educate, but the essence of it all is it's got to come from the local community, and they've got to truly believe in it and see the benefit from it. So if we can help them and direct them and educate them, I think that's got to be the best way, and give them alternatives to, cutting down trees for firewood, for example. So that causes deforestation. That's habitat of the wildlife. So you can't just go in and say, don't cut down trees, because everyone's going to go, well, what do we do then? Because they need wood to cook their meal on for the family that evening. So it's finding alternative methods that will sustain the environment and sustain the wildlife. And if we can do that, I think there's a real positive hope for Africa.
Okay, looks like she's bounced back out again, so hopefully she'll be coming back in. I see there's a question coming through from Winnie, so Winnie, I'll put that through to her in a minute. Let's see if we can just get her back in. Hopefully it won't take her too long. If you do have any questions that you would like to put towards Anna, then please do pop it in the comments section below, and I will do exactly that for you. And if you are enjoying the show, please do give it a like, comment, and a share. The more people that see it, the more awareness we can raise for this organisation and the incredible work they're doing. Hi, Anna, you are back in the show.
I'm back. I'm back. I don't know how much of you heard, but yeah. Community engagement and education is key to everything here.
Completely agree. And we've had some comments as we've been talking saying that fabulous work that you're doing, it must be so rewarding, and also that community engagement is key. We have a question coming through from Winnie. Hi, Winnie. Always lovely to see you. She's a regular watcher of the show. And she's asking, do you have talks with the community with all your intentions and hopes you have to improve all your projects?
Yes, we do. So we've got community conservation educators, 4 of them, we're increasing to 5 this year, who go out and meet with groups in the community 4 mornings a week. And that could be women's groups, church groups, youth groups, any kind of community groups in the zones that they live in. And we try and gear those towards the topics that those community groups are interested in. Very different to the schools program, where we go and we go into a school and we go, okay, today, kids, we're talking about lions, yay. But in the community groups, say, what do you want to know? What is important to you? How can we help you conserve? Because people passionately believe in conserving their environment. They value it. They value the wildlife. They value the environment, but they need those resources to live. And so we say to them, how can we help you live without destroying your environment by living sustainably and alongside the animals that sometimes you have conflict with? And they come up, usually the top subjects are human wildlife conflict and deforestation. And those are usually the two that people are most interested in. So yeah, so we are in there 4 days a week in 4 zones. That's 16 community meetings every week.
And do they give you feedback as well? So you might go to them with an idea and they'll say, okay, that might work with this community, but it won't work with this one. Maybe you should try this.
Yeah. The good thing is our community educators live there and are from those zones. So they kind of know what's going to work and it's not going to work. We haven't got some, degree type people from outside that just come in because, we've got people who are from those areas and who know the realities of what's going to work and what isn't. But yeah, no, some fantastic ideas and feedback from the community that really help to shape our programs going forward.
And I think what you've just said there is absolutely spot on, that you don't want people that haven't lived in that area going in and lecturing people how to live their lives, because it's not a life that they've ever lived. So it does need to come from the community. We have a question coming through from Ruthie, and she is asking, other communities are using rocket stoves to save the trees. Can you get any of those?
Yes, we had a program last year where we
Okay, she should be coming back in shortly. But thank you everyone for all the lovely comments that you've been posting so far. Really nice support. Great to see everyone kind of getting behind this project and trying to help out. We've had some lovely comments from all over the world. Okay, Ruthie, sorry, come back in. Yes.
Yeah, brilliant idea. And we distributed about 2,000 in the last year to communities in this area, and the community love them and have taken them all up. And we've done follow-up investigation to see how they're being used, and they're fabulous. Yeah, we need more of them. So for anybody who doesn't know what a rocket stove is, it's a small sustainable stove that you push tiny sticks into, and the heat goes up into this kind of drawn up into this chamber, intensifies the heat. But you only need tiny little sticks instead of big branches from trees, and so the amount of firewood is greatly reduced. Really good idea. Love it.
Have you seen that then? Have you seen that deforestation has reduced off the back of that?
No, I can't say that. I wouldn't have enough information to hand to say that because of this influx of population and the growth of population that's kind of balancing everything out. Yeah. But I think it has probably slowed it down.
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? Any difference is a difference at the end of the day. So what's your hopes for the future? What have you got planned? What exciting developments have you got coming up?
Well, we have lots of plans. We have plans for expansion, not massive, but we do have plans to take on more staff to expand the program. My main hope for the future for this program and for this organization is to invest everything into the future generation. And that's the real ethos of Chipembele is that these young children that we have been working with for so many years go on to take up jobs in conservation and become the leaders of conservation in Zambia. And so if our project can have just a small impact on that, then I will be really, really happy. And that's the way that we are putting more and more, steering more and more of our effort into supporting students who are really, really keen on going into further education or finding jobs in conservation, because that's where the future lies. It has to be in the hands of this young generation.
For sure. And I've just pulled the website up here onto the bottom of the page. Is this the best way that people can check out your work and support the work that you're doing?
Yep, definitely the website. And we've got an active Facebook page as well, which is Chipembele Wildlife. But you can find that if you go to that website, you'll find all the links on there. And yeah, do follow us. Do follow us.
We've got a question coming through from Chidlogo, and they are saying, great job you're doing. She's new to conservation education with community and school kids, and she's looking for fascinating ways to portray the messages. Do you apply any specific strategies to implement conservation education? And then how do you evaluate your feedback?
Oh, well, please get in touch with us, because we've got a whole range of strategies. And I think that's the strength of our organisation, is we've used a whole range of strategies, not focused on one. And we've looked at things that failed and things that or haven't worked so well, and changed them and got feedback from the community. And then we have a monitoring and evaluation officer who actually looks at all our programmes and evaluates them through a whole range of interviews and surveys and whatever, and gives us that gives us a lot of feedback. And that's really, really important, because sometimes you think you're doing a great job, and then you see the outcome of these interviews and you're actually maybe not doing quite a good job in certain areas. But please get in touch with me personally. I'd be very happy to help you. That's what I love actually doing now. Now I've been doing this for a few years now. I feel that I'm able to help advise other organizations and build on, not make some of the mistakes maybe that we made in the first instance, and help you to make the best program you possibly can for your particular area. I don't know where you are in the world, but it doesn't matter. The principles are still the same. But basically a whole range of programs. The more programs you can get, the better it is.
I agree. And it is a learning curve, isn't it? You might start off thinking one way and actually realize you end up doing something completely different. And that's why it is so important to monitor them to see if it is actually having an impact. So if you want to drop me a DM. Say that again.
Networking as well. Networking is so important. To network with like-minded conservation organizations to get ideas and support is really, really important. I mean, I don't know where we would be today if we hadn't networked around the world, as well as locally and nationally, and it's really, really important.
Yeah, and I think the more voices are being heard, then the more that we can do to actually come up with ways to keep the conversation going and to help these animals. Okay, so I've only got one more question left. Again, if there is a question that you want to put towards Anna, just pop it in the comments section. And again, thank you to everyone for all the comments and support you've been given throughout. So I like to always finish on a bit of a positive note, and I'd just love to know what your favourite success story is.
Oh, I've got lots of them. But without really going in specifically, I would say the best success story of Chipembele is in the students that have been through our program who are now actually in conservation jobs in Zambia and are doing that job on the ground. And there's lots of them. I've just created a wall on the back of my classroom in our conservation centre, which is a conservation gallery of stars with pictures of all the students that have been in our program and now working in conservation. And I'm so proud of it. So, for example, can I give you an example?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So, Samson.
Let's see. She will be coming back. It's normally just a very temporary little blip, but hopefully she'll be coming back in for us. Let's see. Again, if you have got any questions, pop it in the comments section and we'll do that for you. And we'll put any of the questions and comments. And again, thank you for all your kind words and comments you've been saying since we've been going. Okay, you were talking about your favourite success.
Right, so just an example, because there are lots of shining stars out there, but I'll give you an example. Samson Moyo, and I really hope he's listening, was in our program from year 5 at primary school. And when he got into like grade year 8, 9, 10, he started getting interesting in photography. And somebody gave him, his sponsor actually from the Africa Hope Fund, gave him a little camera and just point and shoot. And he got fascinated by it. He went on to teach himself about photography, got a better camera, taught himself, started to get involved in film work, taught himself how to edit films, taught himself completely because of his, and all he wanted to do was to be a wildlife film producer. So because of his passion, and I'm all about passion, anybody that's got a bit of passion, I'm right behind you. We've managed to find sponsorship for him to go to film.
Okay, so that's great as well, Chiogo, that you're happy for her to get in touch. What you can do is send me a DM, and what I can try and connect you both together. This is exactly what it's all about, is trying to connect people in conservation so we're able to help each other to spread the word. Okay, sorry, you were saying he wanted to be a filmmaker.
Yeah, so we managed to find him sponsorship to go to film college in South Africa and he got a diploma in digital filmmaking. Since then, he has worked for all sorts of film organizations, BBC, Disney, National Geographic, Plimsoll, a lot of all the top wildlife film producers in the world, just helping assist. And he's got his own.
Hopefully she'll be coming back in soon and then we can finish up. We're coming towards the end of the show now anyway, but what we'll do is hopefully we'll get to hear the end of this lovely story about how he's gone on to go and share his passion. And then once we've done that, we can then start to finish up. So Anna, yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so he's 24 and he's got his own film company called Mosam Media. He's just won an award in South Africa for to create his own film documentary, which he's done. It's called Reformed, and it's about a very real story, a documentary of a wildlife poacher who turned into a scout, was reformed into a scout. And he produces short films for conservation NGOs, and just the most amazing, incredible person that is putting that message out there to the rest of the world about wildlife and conservation. And if we can get more Samsons in this world, it's really going to change.
And it also shows as well, just by someone doing something so simple as by giving him a camera, it completely changed his entire life. So that's why it's so important that there's nothing too small that you can do to help people kind of empower themselves, uplift themselves, and in turn become an inspiration for others to do the same.
Yeah, that's right. Such a great role model for all the children that are coming up behind him as well.
Yeah, it shows that if he can do it, they can do it as well. Nothing's impossible. So Anna, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. We're going to start to wrap up now, but is there anything you'd like to say before we say goodbye?
No, but follow us. We are in need of funding and donations always, but just your support, following our Facebook page, liking us, and all that sort of thing is really, really valuable.
Yeah.
So thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much. And thank you again, everyone back home, for all your lovely comments and words and shares and likes. It really does make a difference. Something so simple as just giving it a share could encourage other people to get involved in conservation work. So thank you, everyone, for coming on the show and watching. And for now, enjoy the rest of your day.